The new Melle Pulse, episode 4, take 1. Welcome to the new Melle Pulse, where we are uniting communities on common ground.
We're telling stories, sharing information, and spotlighting people making an impact in our community.
New Melle is our heart, but the Pulse beats far beyond our city limits.
All right, so we're back. Episode 4. It's been really fun to get all the kinks out. We added a team member. We're really, this is starting to take on a pretty amazing life of its own. And we're getting feedback from people in the community as we've kind of just now marketed it and kind of let people know, hey, we're doing this. And it's been really fun, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yes, it's been a lot of fun. We definitely kind of waited a minute to market our stuff because we are kind of trying to we just told we've been talking about it so long that we're like, let's just do it. And so we just started to do the action, and now we're like catching that momentum and building and getting it better at adding more people to the crew to help us out. So I'm really excited. I'm excited to fully launch it out to the community and start getting some feedback and hearing what people say.
Well, it comes super easy, I think, for both of us to be passionate and be inspired and have hot topics in the mind and want to share and have a conversation. So it definitely doesn't feel forced to have to do this.
No.
I don't think we're like, oh God, I have to go record a podcast. It's no, this is fun. And we're definitely seeing the impact even on a small scale. So today we are continuing our conversation from last episode 3, where we really gave a primer into the whole development conversation. We started introducing concepts like the 10-year master plan, which one of those we're going to revisit today. We also saw some footage from the county executive. What we talked about a bunch of different things.
Yeah, it was just really kind of setting that stage and highlighting the situation, the event that kind of really has spurred a lot of reaction, and not just me, but a lot of people in our community. And that was that tall tree development off of Double D. So we kind of covered some of that. We covered when we listened to Elman that was at one of those meetings talking about his vision for our county. And we want to kind of continue that conversation in a couple aspects. One, we want to go back. It was the longer episode, so
was it 58 minutes?
I know, I couldn't believe it. But I feel like it flowed really well, and it was very engaging. Even I was engaged while I was editing it. So, but then we want to keep that conversation going and talk more about that 10-year master plan. We didn't really get into talk about that future land use map, which is really one of the most important pieces of the 10-year master plan. I'm trying to say 2030 and 10-year at the same time.
And the 10-year master plan, I hear a question in the room, why is this important to be talking about this? And so we really want to start from a solid foundation here when we're talking about a topic as sensitive as development of our land. And that's resources. We're talking about families' houses. This is a big conversation. And here at the Pulse, we definitely don't want to be biased. So this is kind of our starting place of okay, well, hey, let's look at what's already out there.
What's been going on?
Right,
what have they been saying? Yeah. What data are they using? And that's the other important part with the 20-year master. Oh my goodness. The 10-year master plan, the one that's currently out there is for 2030. But it's important because that is what, well, number one, you see exactly what their layout is and what their vision is and where they're saying the development's going to occur. You also get to understand the data that they're using and what is the data saying, and you can read that and interpret that yourself. And it's important to know both of those pieces, because as we get into some of these conditional use permits and rezoning requests, and we look at the rezoning requests in these areas, and then the county claims that it follows the master plan. But if you remember when I talked last week, the last episode, I mentioned that the way they do the math to get to that is very different than the way I think you and I would do it. Is it 3-acre lots? That's what we want. We want 3-acre lots. But what they're doing is they're like, well, no, we have all this acreage and we're going to divide it by the homes. And so even though we have homes on less than a 1/4-acre lot, because we're not developing part of it, it's just a way to kind of mess with the numbers, And so I think it's really important to understand that, because as we see these rezoning requests, then we can help as citizens understand, again, the mentality. Now, we're seeing, like I just said with that math, and we're seeing some of these acceptances being made for, these rezonings that are a lot higher density than we would expect, especially off of Double D. So I think it just like really understanding again where they're coming from, where that other side, the people who are making the decisions, like what is their what data is important to them.
I know you and I are both passionate about is telling stories, and we talked about this briefly last episode of the role of transparency in government systems, and that's what we're doing here today, and that's what we're going to be continually trying to do here with these concepts is breaking them down, decoding them. So like, you know, I'm hearing people say like, what even is a zone? And that's what this episode is going to be focused on. We're going to break down like, why should you care about a 10-year master plan? We're going to provide some resources that clarify the importance and demonstrate the importance of the 10-year master plan and show how it is being used year after year after year to continue to further efforts. And I can say that, you know, before I saw these resources, I was somebody who probably was a couch complainer, you know, and it's easy to be one of those people when you don't have the resources in front of you and you don't see like, actually this has been being talked about for years now. And so I can't just like start complaining today. In fact, I need to take proactive action so this doesn't happen next time. So let's get right into it. We're going to break down the 10-year master plan. We're going to talk about some of the resources, and then we're going to kind of wrap up with a little bit of a segue into the next section of our development conversation. But let's start with the 10-year master plan, Liv. I know you like pulled so many cool resources about this.
Well, this is just kind of picking back up. I showed this briefly at the end of the last episode, and we, you know, here you have like all these different tabs at the top, and right now we're on the demographics. And I think that this is important because I noticed this in somebody else's report. I came across a website that they had kind of like done their own summary of all of this, but I found it in here, and I just really want to highlight this one right here. The issues is that 77% of the population growth is expected to occur in the western area of the county, and services will need to be provided to these areas. And so you can very clearly see like who is the western side, you know, that's where we are. So I just think that's important, and I can't express enough like going through this and really just kind of paying attention to some of these, and some of these, you know, you can click to see the actual data that they use.
So even just that one real fast, like if we break that down, what that's essentially saying is that the growth that is required to meet this master plan is expected to predominantly occur in the western undeveloped areas, and that is where it is being prioritized. That is where any conditional use permits are being granted for everything. So I think just, you know, we're going to take a little sidestep here and make sure everybody gets that. Like that is the foundational basis then. And so that backs like, well, why did that get approved? And that seems like it might break that, you know, a form of law or form of rule. And so with this, we can see the very plan itself is recommending, no, the growth needs to happen out this way.
Oh, absolutely.
So cool. Okay.
So if on this now, on my computer screen, I didn't have this, it like showed this little icon, and it's going to show you your future land use map. And this is the part that's like just super, and just to what you were saying, the point, this is what's telling us what they expect those zones to be in 10 years. And I'm going to actually switch over to a different view because that one gets.
Maybe we could just give the TLDR, too long didn't read version of like, what is a zone?
Yeah.
For somebody who doesn't even know what a zone is, because I think there's definitely people who don't even know like what is a zone and why should you care about what zoning is.
That's a very good question. So I'm sure there's somebody out there that can explain this a lot better than I can, and I'm probably like broad stroking it. But what they do is like and specifically in our county, they've broken up these areas and they designate zones for them. And these zones are what is the type of land use that's going to happen in this area. So you can see here we've got a lot of this really light green, and the light green is our agricultural.
Okay, so zoning governs acceptable use of land in certain areas and geographical areas. And when you are in a certain zone, then if I'm following correctly for everybody here as well, when you're in a certain zone, there's certain things that you can do as a developer, even as a homeowner, as a commercial entity. And then there's certain things that you can't do. And then there's ways to get things rezoned. Which is what we're seeing happen.
And that's a great point, like, because the zoning does affect, you know, the lot sizes, but also that like if it's a residential area, you aren't allowed to build a commercial business right in the middle of it. You know, so there are good things to this.
Deerbergs
zoning.
might not be happening down the street from you.
Right.
And so you can have faith, and that's why. So if you're, you know, even as a new a family that's wanting to move to the area, you know, this is for you to look at and see if when you're choosing your home, what is the future plans of the land where you're at.
Well, and you know, and there are absolutely people who love to be in, you know, in the middle of all the things happening, and who like, and that's the lifestyle that they want to live, and that's totally cool. I think, and we're kind of going to touch on it a little bit later, but even today I was having a conversation with somebody, and they were like, we were talking about, you know, the progression of development out here, and how, and she said, like, I moved out here to be in an agricultural area, in an open space area where we're not on top of each other. Like, that's why I moved out here.
Well, and we're gonna hit back on that because we're seeing people continue to follow that trend, and now we're seeing it impacting our county.
Yes, that's a plot twist. So on this, you do have your land, your legal, or oh my gosh. Here you have your legend and land use classifications. This is a little blurry right now just because I had to take a screenshot of it, but you can download the PDF from their website or that interactive map, and it's very clear to read.
We'll throw a link directly to the PDF in the description of like the YouTube or whatever platform you're listening to. It'll be in the description down there. You can look at it.
Yeah, also a great note too. We're going to try and do better about describing these things for our podcast listeners, but when you do have a chance and you get to a place where you can jump on YouTube, that is where you can come and watch the episode, and you can skip forward to the parts that we talked about it, and you can actually see all the screen recordings that we're doing so that you can kind of match up.
The visual media that we show is impactful and adds a lot to the conversation. So
anyway, so we've got our agricultural, and the interesting thing or the important thing to note here with agricultural is that when you go to build residences, it has to be on lots of 5 acres or greater. When you move down into, you know, then you've got your parks and open spaces, your rural residential uses, which is more out in our area, and that's where it's generally 3-acre lots, but clustering is encouraged. That's another important note to kind of pay attention to, because I've realized that's also kind of the caveat that they put to a lot of this of like, but we want it to be clustered because we want, in regards to being able to provide services to them.
Right, so infrastructure.
Yes.
Okay, so water, and when we say services, we're saying water, sewer, electric even. Those are things provided by, maintained by the county, and it's the county's obligation to maintain those things, especially if they're in an incorporated area, if I'm correct, right? Mm-hmm. When we get into the unincorporated areas, that's where we might have some difference as to, you know, the county isn't obligated to bring water out. For example, I just know that the people who, you know, before New Melle incorporated, I mean, you know, New Melle had its own municipal water system, I think eventually, but everybody had wells out here. Mm-hmm. And there was...
Everybody still does outside of the actual city limits.
Everybody has their own septic too. Mm-hmm. So, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, which is an interesting note, because I do believe when recently a topic came up, or a rezoning request came up for down Forestdale Roads right next to New Melle Lakes Park, and if I remember correctly, and I wanted to go look it back up, but I couldn't find it because New Melle isn't putting their stuff online anymore, so I got to reach out to them on that. But I'm pretty sure they had said at that point that New Melle couldn't service anymore because they're at like 98% capacity for like, I think it was like more like sewer type stuff, but that's why, and water, but now we're expanding all these water lines out here from Duckett Creek, which Duckett Creek is the county's water system.
Got it.
And if you remember last week when we were listening to Steve Ellman, that's one of the things he was talking about is like, now that we have our own wastewater and water system, we can start supporting more development, because, you know, it was all about supporting the developers. So anyway, so the other things are, we go into our low density residences. That's when you can have 1 to 4 dwellings per acre. And then, you know, it just goes up from there on medium and high density.
So there's multiple different types of classifications and land use classifications. The map that we're currently looking at, again, really recommend you check out the video or download this map so you can see what we're talking about right now. But this is the future.
This is the 2030. So this is like supposed to kind of guide the plans until 2030. And they're currently right now in talks in their committee of trying to like update it. I guess they had to update it every 5 years. So they're already kind of like currently working on it right now for the next updates. But yes, this is the map for 2030. And when you look at the map, and you'll see basically number one, this always amazes me when I look at this kind of map of our whole county, because I never really realized until I got more involved in this. Like, we go, like, the way our county goes up north and east is like almost all, it's like touching Alton. It's into West Alton.
We hit the Mississippi, man.
It's like, I just never really
think about that. That's crazy. And I think this is where we see a dichotomy and a split, because it's like we have a county that has people all the way at the same, line of St. Louis. And then we have people who are an hour and 15 minutes away from there in the same county, totally different lifestyles, totally different lands.
Well, and it is interesting because that northern part of our county and eastern part, the northeastern part, is heavily also agricultural, but that's in a lot of floodplain areas.
Right. Well, of course, that's how, yeah.
So now that's what when you're looking at this map, you see that. Then you get into like the kind of middle section of our area, which we heard Elman refer to it, the Golden Triangle, which we'll talk about. I found a graphic on that because I actually had no idea what he was talking about. But you see, like here now, like in the middle, like along 70 and our 40, you're seeing all of that higher density, resident. Like we've got a lot of that yellow, right, which is that. And now it's low density, but that's still the 1 to 4 dwellings per acre.
Do you want to hover over where New Melle is on here? Okay.
Before I do that though, so what you can see, the New Melle is right here in this like light yellow. And we have all this agricultural land to the south of us. Okay. But I want to just point out that we have one other little tiny part of our county up here. And I believe this is the St. Paul area. That is also supposed to stay this like rural. That's such a hard word.
It can be for sure.
Residential. So yeah, when you go in here now, like, and again, this gets a little blurry because it's a screenshot, but so here's D&Z. So here's the right of the heart of New Melle, and you can see that we have a little bit of red, which is the commercial business, which we have in the heart of New Melle. We have some public lands out here, and you can see here's where Holt Road is, and then this is Forestdale Road. So you can see that's where our parkland is that we have, which is like an amazing, beautiful park.
Yeah, New Melle Lakes Park is beautiful.
I love that. I love that place. So you're basically going, so if you're following down in towards like the Forestdale area, the development is looking to go south of that. And it's like looking to stop kind of around, I don't know, what would you say? Like that's Buckner Road off of N, which we know that's where the N extension is going to happen, or the David Hochul Parkway N extension that they're making.
Well, so here's Dyer, and then here's Hopewell, and that's N. So this is the new subdivision Harvest is right where you're circling your mouse at now. And
is that Darden Creek? Is that what this is?
This is Darden Creek.
Okay, yeah.
And this is what people have been really concerned about, and the talk of the town is them crossing Darden Creek.
Right.
Now, I don't know if there's other reasons why they're not. Maybe they're just following a natural watershed. Maybe not. Maybe it has something to do with the water treatment. I'm not sure. But that is the Darden Creek line. That is the Darden Creek line.
So it just, we've just got this small little chunk of land here that we're just trying to keep. Now, I shouldn't say small, because south of us is that agricultural, which is the 5 acres. But we know when we go into that area too, that's very hilly terrain, heavily densely, aside from like the farmers fields, but there's a lot of trees. That's not exactly the most easiest area, I would think, to develop money wise, like you're going to put a lot of money into like developing that. Right. So, I guess that's my question that I have a lot that comes into my mind when I look at all this stuff, and it's like, oh, but we're leaving this, and oh, but we're leaving that. But it's like, but are you doing it because you have to? You don't really have another option? So anyway, I don't know. I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out, because that is like, this future land use map is a really important map. If you're looking at moving to St. Charles County, if you're wanting to move within St. Charles County and somehow you can magically afford it still, definitely look at this map. Definitely look at this and decide, what are the important things to you? Do you want to be around some of these areas? Like Cottleville has also grown a lot, and it had kind of some similar vibes to, I feel like, some of our small town, especially how it used to be. Now, I will say I feel like they've done a pretty good job. I don't go there too often, but I feel like they have done a really good job of like developing, but still keeping it really beautiful and like still kind of keeping some of that small town charm. Like they have, so anyway, there's obviously a place for all your different needs here in the county, but here in this part of the county, we've all moved out here to be part of this rural life.
Well, and it's affecting us, and people are making moves. And again, we're going to look at that at the end of the episode. We're going to look at how this is affecting the county at the end of the episode. Let's quick recap on the 10-year master plan. So what Liv was just showing on the screen, the future land use map is one item of the 10-year master plan. Mm-hmm. And the 10-year master plan, you can think about it like a business plan for any business. So this is the way that the county is governing their plans, their administration. It's what the administration looks to as the guiding docs. So I love how you bring up, like, for all the new families and for people currently living here, because that plan, you could probably go and see that same use map 1 year ago.
That's one thing is I tried to look it up and I couldn't find an archive. I really wanted to go back and I wanted to see, like, what did the 2010 year master plan look like? I really want to go back that far. And like, when did...
Yeah, if anybody has any of those files, like somehow like you saved it, that would be really cool. Send them in. We would love to show people, because that's one thing that we like doing here at the Pulse is juxtapositioning the past with the current, how it's changed, if it's really changed, and like what's the impact from that. Yeah. So seeing, the county's master plan really changed.
Right. That's kind of what I would be curious to see, is like what, and maybe it didn't, maybe it's just always been like that, because as I've like started to, and we're going to see it here in a minute as I show you a couple other things, the mentality does seem to just be grow, grow, grow. We need more money. We need more money. It's all about bringing the money in. So,
and we all know that there's other aspects of life, but to, again, reemphasize why this master plan is so important is that I mentioned this earlier, we don't want to be couch complainers. We want to be informed citizens. We want to be people in the conversation. People forget that our forefathers of this country, they started this country out of taverns. They started it out of cafes. They were really upset, and so they got together and talked about it. How do we expect to make change if we don't talk about it? That's why we're starting the conversation. So let's re-emphasize why this master plan is so important with two resources. We're going to talk about the 2023 State of the Union, and then we're going to look at the 2024 annual report. Yep. So the first thing is State of the Union.
Yeah, and the big thing that I want to show specifically for this conversation is just more about kind of the mentality with our parks. But I would really encourage everybody, this is the one from the State of the Union from 2023 or the state of the county, I guess, is from the county executive, Steve Ellman. He presented this and had a lot of data around our county of, even like some police response times and first response, like crime rates, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's very interesting to watch. It's not very long. I think it's important to just watch and kind of understand, like, again, it's really just important for us to all understand the data and, just like you said, be informed citizens. So the thing I want to say about this one is in regards to our parks. And this is like kind of, when I heard it just continues to like kind of ring in my head, and I think, and it's a question for the citizens, is like, is open spaces and public parks and places where we can go do these outdoor activities, since we no longer have the land to do it, is that important to us? And do we feel like the standards that they're trying to achieve is good enough for us, or do we need to tweak it?
Right, because ultimately, all of our public officials are representations of our values. And it's
our tax dollars.
Exactly. And so this isn't, I think the invitation here is always like stepping out of complacency together, because I think we have slowly fallen into that. And then we have really brave people and people who are bold and being like, no, I'm starting my own group. And they start these movements and they go and they talk about it. They attend the meetings. There's people out there, they know who they are, and they have been diligent with this. Yeah. There's people, I'm like one included, that's like, I really need to start really paying attention to these things. So let's take a look at this video.
Well, we're gonna listen in here.
Okay, cool.
How do we stack up? I've been told this story before. I guess I'll maybe tell it one more time. 18 years ago when I came here, I asked our parks director, how many acres do we need to have in our park system so we'll have the same ratio of acres to people as St. Louis County? And she told me, I forget what it was. I think it might have been 1,000 acres or something. I said, okay, that's our goal. Well, as you can see, we passed 1,000 acres. Problem is, we've got 40,000 more people since she made that calculation. So we still got a little ways to go, but hopefully we will be able to get to that point where we have the same number of acres per people as St. Louis County.
It's interesting. It's interesting how it's not even discussed. Why make a comparison to St. Louis County? Why make a comparison to St. Louis City? Who said that anybody here wants to be like St. Louis City or St. Louis County? Like, when did St. Louis City and St. Louis County become the comparison mark? Are we going to compare our crime rates to St. Louis and St. Louis County? Maybe we should think about, all of that stuff. When did we decide that?
Right.
As that's going to be the mark of our parks. Not to mention that St. Charles County, among all of the counties surrounding St. Louis, is probably the one that has closest access to a rural area.
Yeah.
When you think about, like, not Washington, but Dutso, and those areas that are like right on the St. Charles County, Warren County line, Augusta, Defiance. I mean, these are rural areas. Femi Osage. So where did we go from St. Louis and Del Mar and okay.
And I just think, I also thought it was interesting too, just like 18 years ago, we just like picked this number out. Now, I did do a little bit of research. I started to go down a rabbit hole, and I had to back myself out because I didn't have time, but it was distracting me. But there was some sort of like precedent set back in, I want to say, the 40s about what is the right amount of like open land park space per citizen. And actually their rates were like 1,500 acres per 100,000.
Wow.
But I don't know. I don't want to like completely quote that because, like I said, I didn't have enough time to like fully read, because there's like more parameters too. Like that obviously would change if you're in a metropolitan downtown area versus, so like there are some fluctuations there, but I do agree that, and when you look at these numbers, so what, we're 33 acres ahead of St. Louis City?
It's pitiful.
The city.
Let's take a drive down St. Louis. There's Tower Grove. There's a couple of really big parks. There's a couple of like, areas like that. And then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, St. Charles County, like, okay, Alton, way to Defiance. Oh,
right.
33 more acres of parks and free land, and so this isn't a slam bash.
No, but really, you're right, because those would have been St. Louis City.
Yeah, and I don't want to slam bash like the parks directors and people who are like, hey, like we don't have the resources. Like, well, that's fine. We do have a lot of rural open free land. But when you say that everything we need to do is to grow, and I think the point here is that why are we making a comparison to St. Louis City? Mm-hmm. To me, like, that is the biggest point. Like, why are we measuring against that figure? Because that tells me about the envisionment of the future density of people. Mm-hmm. That tells me about what the land's going to look like. I mean, I get a whole visual picture of like, it's going to be Highway K everywhere. And I'm like, I, as a citizen, tax-paying citizen, do not want that.
And I am here expressing I don't want that. And I think that's the invitation, is like, do you want that?
Because even the people who live in those areas, like, my mom lives in like the downtown Wentzville area, and it's very convenient for her and it's great. But like, even people who live there are so frustrated with the traffic and the like the overcrowdedness. And it's like, there's like, again, it's like that medium, like, we're not walking a more balanced line. It's just, we need the money, so let's bring in whoever we can bring in. And I get that. I mean, I get it at the end of the day too, like, to be able to provide county services and to be, I understand that there is a money component there, but like...
It is, but we never ask the question. And why are we so afraid to ask the question, are we doing it the right way? Mm-hmm. Is there a better way? This doesn't mean that we need to, hold the phone, everybody, tell the contractors to stop working. No, it just means like, why don't we ask? Have you thought about soliciting for feedback from citizens? Genuine feedback, not in a gated minute time slot. Have you thought about that and saying, hey, what do you guys think is the best plan forward? And what is your envisionment of the county? Instead, oh, no. You got to keep track of all the meetings. You got to attend the time slot.
And what's interesting too is though they do with this like master plan committee that's like currently in session, they did create a survey for citizens to fill out.
Well, that's good.
So that is good to get, and I just don't know how much they distribute, I know about it just because I've been really involved in like trying to be part of that, but like I don't know how much like that is really made aware to people in the public. And the other factor is that Smart Citizens for St. Charles County Growth, when I was telling you last episode that they had FOIA'd the county, and that was part of like they wanted more data on the master plan process. And in all of this work that they've done with the county and trying to fight this development, they actually got invited. I think it was like a couple members, or maybe it was just one member from that group, got invited to go be part of one of these like meetings. And they talk about it on their website. I really highly encourage you to go read it about their experience in these meetings, who they were partnered with, who were the other people in these meetings. And I'll just like go ahead and throw this out there. There was not a lot of citizens. They were a lot of developers in the room with these people. And so I think I would highly encourage you, we can include that link, we included it last week as well. But so to your point, they're asking, but then are they really actually listening?
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean...
Or they're like, nope.
Yeah, it's not accessible to the citizens.
Yeah.
No.
So, all right, so we're going to switch gears real quick, and we're going to go to this 2024 annual report that they did.
And now this was a hired out consultant group. So we saw in the State of the Union, again, how the 10-year master plan and its push for growth is being referenced by the comparison to St. Louis. Because if we weren't interested in growth, we wouldn't do that. And so we see an example there. Now, in this example, we're going to see how the growth again, it's all growth, is again reemphasized and said, this is what we need to do. And in fact, because we're not growing, that our county's failing is what the summary of this is.
Yeah.
So let's take a listen.
So this was part of a resilience plan of how do we move forward as an economy. 3 reports came out of it. One was workforce development. Another was a competitive peer study against us and some peers. And then the final blueprint for success, which is the main one in the middle. With your indulgence, I'll take you through some of the recommendations that are there and happily answer some questions. First off, we went out to bid. We received 13 bids from around the country. The group that ended up scoring the best and was chosen by our executive committee and ratified by our full board was out of Atlanta, Jay Garner with Garner Economics. Jay Garner is a leader in an industry called site selectors. These are the secret shoppers of economic development. They are hired by mid-level and higher-level companies and sometimes international firms to decide where should they build their next office, their next manufacturing plant, their next distribution area. And so Jay actually helped start the national organization called the Site Selectors Guild. He was their founding president. He's also a past president of the International Economic Development Council. And when there are site selection conferences to talk about growth and plans and where the economy going, Jay is one of those key speakers that's relied on. So when we got him, we got somebody that was really going to have a hard look and give us some real truth on how to look at things in St. Charles County and going forward.
Have you ever met that guy?
No. He's from Georgia. No, and that is the interesting thing. And I kind of started it partway through. You did kind of need to go back a little bit to understand like this whole connection. But so they basically went out and hired this consultant to take a look at and help us with our development plans. And so in one of the things, and kind of like what he had mentioned, there was like these 3 reports. And in one of the reports was a competitive like benchmarking report. I'm going to show you that real quick. So what he talks about is, so he goes in and he kind of talks about that, how like St. Charles County is like doing good when you look at us on a whole against other cities in our state. Like we're doing a great job. But when we're looking at ourselves and comparing ourselves to what we consider our peers, and that's what they like identified, and these are cities that are similar to us but are in different areas. And so they identified these 4 counties that they are kind of using as the benchmark with us. And it's Cabarrus County, North Carolina. I don't know if I said that right. Hamilton County, Indiana, Johnson County, Kansas, and Williamson County, Tennessee. So when you look at the growth, when we compare ourselves to these other 4 cities, we are at the bottom. Johnson County, Kansas is below us for growth. So our 10-year growth percentage is 11.3%. Our 5-year growth change is 3.6%. But all of these other counties, that the Hamilton County, Cabarrus County, and Williamson County, their 10-year growth, the lowest one is 25%. So, and the lowest 5-year growth is 10%. So I thought that was really interesting. So again, we're benchmarking against counties that are growing at a much higher rate than we are. Okay, so that's like the benchmark that they are using to determine if we're good.
Right.
So then it's interesting because he goes on to say how we had the rate of people that we had moving into our county at one point was at 10,000 a year. Then it's moved down to 5,000 a year. And now we're at about 2,000 a year. So our growth has really slowed down, which is, I feel like, kind of interesting because, you know, where we live specifically, that's not what we're seeing. Nothing is slowing down out here. But maybe that's just because everything else has already been developed so much that you can't really develop much more. You know, it's already been developed. So I'm going to skip ahead here. And I just want you to hear this because when I heard it, I was like, oh, okay.
We are quickly running out of land. That doesn't mean we pave everything everywhere, but we're running out of big tracts of land, and we're running out of opportunities for a variety of things.
So it's interesting to think about, okay, so we're running out of land. I mean, I think St. Charles County, you can pull up a stat. You saw the map. It's a gigantic county. So my first question is, running out of land for what?
And that's what he says, for opportunities for various things.
And so I think this is where, again, I used the word cloistered in the last episode. And I mean that because, you know, these are conversations happening behind closed chambers. And to me, I'm just like, and I know so many people out here would be like, are you serious?
Yeah.
We're running out of land? I mean, they would probably start getting a little angry. Yeah. Like, you're going to make a comment like that? Really? You think we're running out of land?
That's interesting. So yeah, I felt like that was just running out of land to develop. It is like, in my mind, that's what I felt like. There was like that one word that wasn't said, and it's like, we're running out of land to develop. We can't, you know, because that's, you know, when you look at, like we were looking at the terrain, those agricultural areas, you've either got floodplain issues that you got to deal with, or you've got heavy, you know, changes in slope in the grading, and you've got a lot of dense trees, and so that creates a lot more expense for when you need to develop it. They want these farmers' lands that are already perfectly tilled and flattened, and, you know, so I just felt like that was interesting. And then the last thing I thought, well, actually there was a couple other interesting points. So he goes on to talk a little bit about housing availability and that we're at a critical need for housing availability, but we have a lack of starter homes. It's hard to find anything under $200,000 to $300,000 in this county.
Have you driven on Hopewell lately? You see the sign? You see the sign for without?
What are they starting at? Like 4 or 3?
I think it's like 250.
Oh, okay, 250.
But it's like, you know, most of them. I mean, you have friends. I mean, it's not.
Oh, I'm sure the starting, that means like, you know, no bells and whistles, no extra, like that's just your base.
Yeah, and I think it's like goes up to the millions.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure once you start adding on all those, you know, I want a gas fireplace, I want these types of doors, I want these types of countertops, you know, all of that makes it super expensive. But it was interesting because the guy that's giving the speech is talking about how he still has 2 adult children living at home with him because they can't afford to go buy a home. So it is interesting.
They can't afford to buy a home in St. Charles County. Right. And this is again, in like just hang on here. Like give us a couple minutes. We're going to wrap around to what's happening in the county. This is real statistics because that is the fact that there's a lot of people who can't, like you mentioned earlier.
I mean, when we bought our house in 2008. So we also lucked out. That was when, you know, all the real estate market was pretty volatile and had like popped. And, but my husband and I talk about that a lot now, that like, there's no way that that was our starter home to us. And so there's no way, especially out here, that we would be able to afford to buy a home with 3 acres of land anymore. Like it is pretty crazy how.
Well, and it's unfortunate because now we're kind of playing with like chemistry here, and that now you have people who have moved out here and their land value has shot through the roof. But what's shot down the drain is their experience on the roads, their experience with oncoming, new people who don't respect the same values because the county is pushing growth in an area that doesn't want the growth. And so there's, regardless of right or wrong, there's a tension, and those people feel the tension. And what do? They move. And we're gonna talk about that move, and it's making an impact.
Well, I think that is really interesting because I'm gonna skip ahead to where he said this next part that in this earlier too, like I encourage you to like take the time to listen to the whole thing. Obviously, I'm for time's sake going over a lot of stuff here. So this is the interesting part because earlier in this talk he talks about crime rate, and he talks about how St. Louis, and even Ellman in 2023's State of the Union talks a lot about that too, about like St. Louis County, St. Louis City's crime rates, some of it coming into our county because the St. Louis isn't prosecuting the way they should have been, and so just talking about those kind of like dynamics.
Right.
But he said, and in the beginning earlier he talked about how St. Louis, again, same thing, one of the top 10 dangerous cities. But then we have O'Fallon in our county that's like one of the top 10 safest cities in the country, okay? So then I thought it was interesting that he says this.
So people are leaving the region. People are waiting longer to get married. They're waiting longer or not even having kids. I just celebrated our 40th anniversary, my wife and I. Our kids are almost where we were at 10 or 15 years into our marriage, and they're not even married yet. They don't even have serious girlfriends. So people are waiting longer to have children. So the birth rates are down, the death rates are up. We used to say 10,000 boomers a day were retiring in the U.S. Now we're at 10,000 boomers a day dying in the U.S. So folks are leaving the area because of crime. The population is dwindling.
So he said they're leaving our area because of the crime. And I'm like, that's interesting, because I didn't think our crime was that bad, like as a whole, as a county. So, but then in the 20-year or the 2030 master plan, the 10-year plan, there is an interesting graph. Well, this graphic actually was created by somebody who I was talking about who had created their own graphics just from the data. But this is the data from that plan. And if you look at where from 1992 to 2020, it's the wealth migration of St. Charles County. And it tells you who did we gain wealth from and who have we lost wealth to. So if you think about that and you look at, of course, the obvious, who we gain wealth from: St. Louis County, St. Louis City, Jefferson County, Madison County, and St. Clair County.
Yeah, I mean, it's point out billion and million here on the screen. I mean,
yeah,
we got an incredible, times 10 influx, way more than times 10, 3x from St. Louis County than we did anything else on the chart.
Yeah.
People, which is, that's
$3.39 billion is how much we gained from them. But then when you go to the lost wealth too, I think this is like what really tripped me up was I can totally get, so like on the lower spectrum is Maricopa County, Arizona, Lee County, Florida, Collin County, Texas. So what that's telling me, and just like he had made that comment about the boomers getting older, they're starting to migrate maybe to more of those southern places. Like I think I can totally understand that. But what I think is super interesting is the top two counties that we've lost money to is Lincoln County and Warren County. And I suspect why we're seeing that is because they moved here for that ruralness and that rural vibe and like being out in the country, and that's been totally encroached on, and now they're moving out to the areas that do have that.
Well, and I would agree with your suspicion there, and I would say to everybody who's listening and watching, why don't you go and have a conversation with a stranger that you meet out here in rural St. Charles County? Why don't you ask them what they think about the area? Why don't you ask them, how long have you lived here? And do you want to still live here?
Yeah.
Do that to 10 people and then pull your results, and kind of see what you're getting, because to summarize like what we're seeing here and the importance, and this is why we chose to talk about the 10-year master plan specifically in this episode and to show how important it is. Their narrative has not been changing. It's never changed. But what has changed is people's response to it. And so we're seeing people vacate the very county that they want to see growth in. I mean, I feel like we should be dinging a bell. Hello.
Right.
Hello?
Well, because even that gentleman was talking about, when you listen to the whole thing, and he's talking about his kids again, and he talked about that he would love them to be in this county, to be with family. And it's like, that's the part to me that gets so frustrating, because it's like, but they can't. They like, why do you think they're still living? Even if they're not married, they're still living with you because they cannot afford to buy the homes here. Because we've outpriced, because we have entertained developers to the point at the cost of our citizens.
I think it's clear that, like, how could you not be frustrated? How could you not feel even misled? You know, there's this promise and this choice that a lot of people make and say, you know what, let's move out of the urban areas, let's move into the country. And then it's like they raise their kids, and, you know, like your son, like, you probably don't want your son to live in St. Charles County. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't even know how he's going to afford housing. You know, and so these are things where it's like, it's really challenging now, not for one or two people, it's challenging for thousands of people to even meet their basic needs, to continue their family line here. So I think we need to kind of like address what we're seeing here is this philosophy of like growth westward, or to just, you know, or rural areas, development. People vacate the area because they're not happy. They go to another rural area. The development continues to grow. Like nothing has like,
And then nothing's going to change.
and there was a rapid progression, right? Like there was a certain age, we know when St. Charles County went overnight, you know, basically there was a stat, we were one of the fastest growing counties in the country at one point, you know, and so yeah, people remember who have grown up out here, Highway K was all fields. It's not now.
No, it was like a blinking stoplight.
Right. And so let's think about that and think about what is where our area is now, where it's like, you know, there's not a stoplight around here. It's stop signs. But you go further, we got the Warren County line about 10 miles west of here. Okay, people are moving there. I'm glad I have property in Warren County. I'm glad I'm building my house in Warren County. But I know that Warren County, if we don't change the philosophy, because
then it's gonna
right, and really, like, how is this sustainable?
Right.
Like, I like to think about this in terms of like business operations, right? Like, we all want to sit back and be like, economics, and let's keep money in the country, and I'm all for American-made, you know, stuff. And it's like, are you? Your development practices are completely contradictory to that. You are leaching resources everywhere. You go through one area, you bring the property value down because you make it an urbanite, suburbanite area full of plastic houses. You rip all the trees out. Ladue already knows, don't do that. Your house value stays high. And then people leave. And then the people who live there don't have the same values. They don't care about their neighbors because they're coming from foreign areas. Because that's the only people you're going to get to live in those plastic homes. You're not going to get the people who are longtime residents to live in a plastic house that's on a shameful spot of land that used to be a beautiful, picturesque view, and now it's a view of a freeway and a couple of, you know, like convenience stores. I mean, this is not the life that people choose. But then it happens, and then they move. And then the development just keeps going, and it happens again and again. And I think the question we have to ask ourselves, like, when is the philosophy going to stop? How, and this is what we're going to talk about this, the impact that this is making on not only just, you know, the environment, but on people, on, you know, psychological things, like, and the environment. The ecological impacts are massive, and sometimes it can feel like they're unrepairable.
Well, I mean, you look at like going around our county, and I look at those places that did have that huge boom back in the, like, you know, 90s and early 2000s, and some of those places some of those strip malls are already struggling to have tenants stay in them.
Exactly. And, you know, like, let's take a page out of our friends' books. I mean, we hope to have one of them on, but we are not here advocating to stop growth. We're advocating for smart growth.
100%.
We're advocating for intelligent, rational, and community-led growth. I think that the people in charge, and when I say the people in charge, the elected officials who are operating in a capacity, I don't know that if you ask them honestly, do they feel like they're actually representing their community? And why is that an important question? Because those are the people who are living in the areas. Those are people who pay for the roads. Those are people who pay your. And so, why don't we ask the community? Why don't you ask yourself, like, what do you want to see the county be like? You know, what are your values? And again, always going back to your values. What do you want to see here? And are you seeing it? And if you're not, how are you going to take action?
Right.
to make it that way.
And I think the really important part, like you just said, is the word smart, like smart growth. Like we have to be, we understand development's going to happen, progress 100%. Is going to happen, and that's okay. But like, let's build the roads first. Let's make the infrastructure safe for the people first. Yeah, maybe not as many people are going to use that road right away, but if you know that you're about to develop 4 tracts of 300-acre plots of land, because that's what I started to say earlier, and I totally lost my thought, but one of the slides that they showed when the Highlands came back up was this slide that, and I believe if I remember correctly, it said 2021 was like the original like date of this map. So very clearly years and years before this, where they had identified 3 huge chunks of land that they were interested in developing. And one of them was the tall tree. There's another chunk that's over on, and so these farmers' plots, these tracts of land are already on their radar. Like they are already 10 years ago, we're like, okay, we're moving here. So we need to look at this, and we need, this would be great to have that because it's right here on this road. And like, so, I mean, they are well ahead of us. And I think that, to your point, the only way that we can maybe try to start to make a difference is paying attention to who we're electing and what they stand for, and making sure we're making our voices as loud as possible to know that we do not stand for this. And if that's emailing them for every, setting an auto email to go out every Monday to the board, I don't know, but there's like, we've got to start we have to be louder. Well,
and I think one thing that I know I don't, and so if I don't, I'm going to make the assumption that there is maybe a lot of people who also don't. We don't find the time to ask a very simple question. It's like, what do I want to see in this county? Mm-hmm. And can I write that down in a sentence? Mm-hmm. Can I write that, if I'm, in the elevator, can I give somebody my elevator pitch of like, this is exactly what I want to see in the county? And then how does my life reflect that I am taking steps towards that? And I think this is the issue that we have. It's an issue that is both community-led, and I do want to bring us to the point to where it's like, we're not sitting here finger pointing at the people who decided to, essentially, let's go develop all this land and then blah, blah. We are also accountable. And I do want to always continue to hold the mirror up in front of, like, each of us is very powerful. And we're even more powerful when we bring 2 or more people together. I mean, we're 2 people here and we're like making a lot of ruckus and creating a lot of conversations about something.
Right.
So it's like, imagine 5, imagine 6, 10, 20, 100. It's like time, and when people come together and they are united on common ground, like, I mean, miracles legitimately can happen. Things will shift overnight.
Well, and you can see on the agendas, you can see like what the vote was, and you can also see like, or I'm sorry, I guess it's more on like the minutes from that agenda when they like posted all like what happened in the meeting. But there is a section on there that will tell you how many people stood up and like opposed whatever this topic was, how many were for it, how many emailed in.
Right.
And like on the one, I'm pretty sure it was the one that I shared from back in 2023. But anyway, on one of those, the reports was that they had only had 59 emails in opposition. Now, I think that's a good number, but apparently they didn't. Apparently they didn't think that was enough to sway them. And then there was only 9 speakers against it, but they only allowed, they put a cap on how many people could speak against it. So I think that's the other thing is like, even though there was emailing and even though there was a lot of people like paying attention and like engaging in like the Facebook groups and stuff, it is taking that next step. And I'm just as guilty. There were plenty of times where I had every intention of sending an email and it just like, my day got away from me, things got crazy and I just didn't send it, and it's like, and to your point, that's on me. That's like my accountability as a citizen is I have to do better. And even if it's just like literally, I think my problem is I make it a bigger deal in my head of like, I need to write this very formal letter and realistically it's just as simple as being like, hey, I'm a citizen here and I do not support this. Well, and because 3 points and with smart citizens, a lot of times they would even share like, here's some templates you could use to like base your email off of. So I think it is about paying attention, having the conversations, helping each other know where the information is. Hey, did you see this? Make sure you go look here, watch it, do your own, make your own opinions, and then get involved and make your voice heard.
Well, and yes, 100% to all those things. And one additional thing is, I think we all need to just like slightly, kind of like you're waking somebody up from a sleep and be like, hey, like you can make a difference. Mm-hmm. You can make a change. Like you are the ones they're working for.
Yeah.
As soon as we have this disposition change where instead of it's like, oh, they're doing it again, it's like, oh, they work for me.
And that it is such a good point to make, because I do feel like in just general, we've been beaten down a lot to like not think that man. Like we have a say anymore, and like our vote doesn't matter, but it does, and our voice does absolutely matter. And when you look at historically, big things have changed that have happened, and especially even just in our county, and this will be a totally different topic, but you know, we've seen some massive change in this community created purely from citizens like drive and growth and like pushing it. Not from an elected official, not from a group of moms or a group of citizens, and so again, it is like, you know, they don't want us to think that we have the power, but we do still have it. And that comes in uniting as a community and standing strong and, you know, having those conversations. So
yeah, we have to define what community will be like, and we all play a part in that, and we are the ones in charge. Mm-hmm. I mean, this isn't about being arrogant and being like, you know, waving a big "don't tread on me" flag. No, this is about being peaceful and being like, simply being aware of what actually. Nobody can take that birthright away from you, and it's really more us and how we wield it. And so, dude, I feel we could continue talking about we could continue to talk about this, and we are. And this is why it's a series, and this is why we're gonna break things down, because honestly, if we tried to do it all in one episode, it'd probably be like 4 hours.
Oh my gosh.
We'd need like multiple coffees. Yeah. It wouldn't happen. So this has been in this episode, we really have broken down the importance of the 10-year master plan. We've shown some supportive resources that further demonstrate how the 10-year master plan is used in multiple instances and referred to in all of these little nuances about growth being the most important factor, the common denominator about the plan. It's reemphasized in throughout the years in multiple different occasions, State of the Union, annual reports, and we kind of like wrapped it up with this like impact that it's having and how we saw statistics. This is 2020. Let's take a look at 2025 statistics eventually. Like, you know, people are leaving the county and moving to adjacent counties, and we're losing millions
that are not more populated, that do not have more services than we have. Like they are very rural agricultural areas. So like
they're not moving because they're like, oh, it's Chesterfield, great, I can go to Red Robin down the road. No, they're saying, oh, great, I don't see my neighbors.
Yeah. Please, though, do submit on this development topic. What are things that are important to you guys? We've been asking that throughout this whole episode. We want to know. So please submit those ideas, that feedback. If you want us to do more research on a particular topic, we do plan on having an episode really kind of detailing out this whole tall tree development, which has really spurred a lot of this conversation in our community. So we will dedicate an episode to that. But what else do you want to know? Like, do we want to talk about, you know, like the easements? Like, let's talk about as we expand, and we do expand water lines and stuff. You know, there's been a lot of hubbub on the New Melle 411 about these easements and coming into people's property and, you know, not leaving it exactly the way it was when they got there. And just like, you know, there's a lot of components. So what do you guys want to know? What do you guys want us to talk about? Submit it to New Melle News.
New Melle Pulse. You do it all the time. You do it all the time. NewMellePulse.news. And it can literally be as simple as just a question like, I'm not sure what zones and easements are.
Yeah.
Like, we just want to hear why, because we want to be able to clarify it all. So, because if you're thinking it, there's probably like a big handful of other people who are thinking it. So just be the bold one.
And we may not even know. And I love doing that research and learning more. So.
Exactly. NewMellePulse.news. Just hit contact. It's real easy. It's like takes you 2 seconds. Just submit it. We'd appreciate it.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're gonna wrap up on some good fun things.
Yeah. Let's talk about a couple fun things here happening at Friedens. We've got the country market starting this weekend. Are you so excited?
I am. So this is the 5th year. Ooh. Yeah, this is year 5 of the farmers market.
Maybe like a 5-year like anniversary.
Yeah, I mean, this is I don't know that there was ever a farmers market in New Melle. Since I heard that there was one that was like started, but then it didn't continue. But yeah, it's I'm excited. You know, it's evolved. It's hard, I think, at times because I want it to be a lot more like a farmer's market, and I think many times New Melle is looking for a lot more like a flea type market.
Or like a crafty kind of market.
Like a crafty, because we get a lot of people that go to Lake St. Louis because they're like, hey, big city, they're making a lot of money, but we have a great vendor turnout though, and I'm really excited to continue. This season's gonna be good. We now have indoor and outdoor, meaning so like if it rains, we're for sure always having the market. So like you can count on from the first Saturday in May, which is tomorrow, to the last Saturday in October. There's a market every week, 8 a.m. to noon, local food, crafts, arts,
Love it.
Hot drinks.
Yeah.
Good times.
Cool. And then we also have the garden class that we've launched and offering that doesn't start till May.
Yeah, so Home Gardening 101, May 21st. This is a course about eating well, saving money, and giving back while gardening. It's basically like if you've never gardened, and even if you're intermediate, and even if you're more advanced, what we're doing in this course is breaking things down into super easy to digest components. That it's like, okay, seed starting, okay, planting. And we're gonna be debugging a lot of things. I hear so many people being like, I don't know if I could plant this then. I don't know about this. And it's common knowledge that we've just kind of lost. And so we're just gonna it's gonna be a really simple primer. We're gonna break it down. People are gonna walk away with planting guides. They're gonna walk away with like physical, things that they can use to help them in their garden. It's a good time. I think we've seen a lot of requests for something like that, and so
Four classes.
Four classes. They're an hour each, 2 sessions each class. So if you're a busy schedule, you can go Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and then Saturday morning, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. It's the same session. The whole course is $50. That's 4 classes. You get tons of different, physical handouts and deliverables. You're going to get to meet a community of people who are like-minded with you. You can also buy the courses individually too. And
then that's cool that it's Saturday. The Saturday option is kind of cool because then it's during the farmers market, so you'll be able to then do a little shopping.
Exactly.
Cool. Sweet.
Then we have a rummage sale coming up, right? You and Gina are organizing a rummage sale.
Yeah. Wentzville had their Wentzville citywide garage sale last weekend, and I actually didn't even get a chance to go out there, and I was super bummed. But then I also kind of had FOMO, and I wish we could do that out here, but it gets a little tricky with our back roads and us being so spread out. So we're like, why don't we just do that here on our parking lot? And we'll just have it'll be like a rummage sale. Everybody bring their stuff, bring your tables. It's a small investment, $10, and then that'll get you a 10 by 10 booth space. And you can get more space if you have more stuff, but bring your table, bring all your fun stuff, the stuff you want to sell, whatever it's clothes or, dressers or furniture or whatever. So I think it'd just be fun and just be like everybody kind of, our own little flea market.
For sure. So people can pay cash on the day, but you are asking that they all sign up prior. We need to make sure you have enough room.
Yes.
And so for the rummage sale, and if you want to be a vendor at the farmers market, you just go to newmellecountrymarket.com.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to find all the info for both of those there and sign up super easy.
Yes.
So again, you said rummage sale, $10 a table. Farmers market.
And wait, I didn't say date either. It's going to be June 1st. And it's going to be from 9 to 1. It's a Sunday. It'll be 9 from 1. People come and set up at 8.
Cool. That's exciting. And then yoga has been going really good here. I've been really impressed with the consistency in the classes, and everybody's feedback seems awesome. So that is continuing.
Yep, we got 2 dates set up in May. I just launched those on our page, so you can figure those or go see those and interact with the event. So it saves onto your calendar. Yeah. But we have a Thursday. We try to do it on Thursdays, but we are going to switch it up one of these days and do a Tuesday just to see if that gives some more variety of people being able to attend.
We did recently have an awesome sound bowl healing session here. It was it wasn't just sound bowls, it was a lot of different instruments. But I was here actually working, and I peeked in while their session, and the entire, sanctuary floor was covered with people. They were all lying down on their yoga mats with blankets over them. It was
That's
wall to wall.
Yeah. Wow, really?
That's amazing. Dude, it was really cool. And then they're walking around with big bowls, and it was you could feel it in the building, the sound of the bowls, they're yeah,
it is cool.
Yeah, it was very cool.
So yep, we've got that set up, and then I'm working on getting the June calendar ironed out too for that, so we can have that up. So yeah, please come. It's $10, a very affordable price to drop in. You can pay ahead of time, pay at the door. One of our local, Amy Na, one of my best friends, but also local to this area. She is our yoga instructor, and she just is we talked about her before. She's just such a fun spirit, and she brings a good energy to the group, and so it's just a nice way kind of wind down at the end of the week and have some you time. So that's what we got going on here at Friedens, and we're going to keep adding more fun to it as we go. If you are interested in hosting your own events here, reach out. We also still have some office spaces available on a subscription basis, so that also helps make things a little more affordable. You don't have to have an office 24/7. Maybe you only need it a couple days a week. We have that availability here. So check us out, Friedens Community Center here in New Melle. The New Melle, oh my God.
I I think it's like I don't think she's
Now
ever.
it's, like, stuck
maybe
in
we
my
should
brain.
just make sure
Change
I
it.
say the
Yeah,
link
you
all
say-
the time.
So when you want to like check out our stuff about the new Melle Pulse, go to.
Go to newmellepulse.news.
Yeah.
It's Friday. It's been a long week.
It has been a long
I'm feeling a little like
definitely-
brain shutting
But
down.
summer's here. You can feel like it's getting here. Like I can feel. I was driving down the road and I was like, man, this is what I love about this area. The smell. You can smell. Everybody like hates honeysuckle, and I'm like, yeah, but I kind of like how it smells in
I
there.
love how, yeah, and we have a
yeah.
big lilac bush outside by our bedroom
so do
windows.
we.
Are actually two bushes frame our wall out there are lilac bushes. Yeah.
So we had our windows open and we had the attic fan on, pulling that in, and like
dude,
the
yeah.
room's just, I love it too. I love it too.
Exactly.
But then I got to make sure I take my Zyrtec. So
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we wish you guys all a super happy planting time. It's a perfect time to get out in the garden. It's a perfect time to be, planning vacations. It's a perfect time to be enjoying life. I think we want to step into this season of summer with a lot of enjoyment. We're going to be having a lot of events here at Friedens Community Center. We're going to be keeping this podcast going, having really awesome conversations. We're going to be interviewing really cool people in the community. We're a growing podcast. We're looking to, talk about and share information about local businesses as well. So if you're interested in any sponsoring, we are bringing sponsors on. So let's for sure connect.
we'll have more details on our sponsor stuff in the coming episodes. But yeah, we definitely have some sponsorship availabilities. We're starting an Amazon wish list if you want to help us grow our production abilities.
Yeah, because this is all we do this from the goodness of our hearts, and we're incredibly. We wake up with a smile on our face to do it, and we would love the opportunity to be able to continue sustainably for a long foreseeable future to do this. So thanks so much for tuning in,
Yes.
and we'll see you next week.
We'll catch you next week for sure. Take it easy.
Bye.